Whoa, the NBA world just got hit with a blockbuster trade. After 8 seasons, the face of the franchise, Trae Young, is no longer an Atlanta Hawk. I mean, this is a move that signals a massive, massive shift for the team and really closes the book on an entire era of basketball in Atlanta. So how in the world did we get here? And more importantly, did the Hawks actually make the right call? Let's get into it. First things first, let's look at the nuts and bolts of the deal itself. It's a pretty clean two-team swap. The Atlanta Hawks sent Trae Young over to the Washington Wizards. And coming back to Atlanta, veteran guard CJ McCollum and forward Corey Kispert. And you'll notice something pretty important here. No draft picks. That's a huge detail. And trust me, we're going to circle back to that. All right, so let's be real clear about this. This was not just another trade. This was the Hawks hitting a giant reset button. For 8 years, Trae Young was the Atlanta Hawks. His identity was the team's identity. So this move is about way more than just the players swapping jerseys. It's a complete change in direction for the entire franchise. And this quote, man, it just sums it all up, doesn't it? This move kind of felt like it was on the horizon for a little while, but pulling the trigger, that officially kicks off a brand new chapter. It forces the whole organization, and especially the fans, to imagine a future without the one player who's defined them for almost a decade. So you're probably asking yourself the same thing I was. Why would you trade a player like Trae Young? I mean, this guy is an offensive genius, right? One of the best playmakers in the entire league. And that's where we get to the on-court stuff. And believe me, this is where it starts to get really interesting. Let's play GM for a second. Put yourself in the front office's shoes. Why on earth would you trade your franchise star? It's a massive risk. Well, the answer starts to get a lot clearer when you look at how the team was actually playing, both with him and without him on the floor this season. And here's this stat that, well, it kind of tells you everything you need to know. This season, when Trae Young was in the lineup, the Hawks' record was a shocking 2-8. Now look, a team's record is never just one guy's fault. We all know that. But when you see a number that lopsided, it's a pretty glaring sign that something on the court just wasn't clicking. And this is the why behind that ugly record. See, while Young was out injured, something funny happened. The team, they changed. They found a new identity on offense that didn't need one guy to dominate the ball. Other players, like Jalen Johnson, just exploded in this new system where the ball was moving. So when Young came back, his style of play, and yeah, let's be honest, his well-known defensive issues, they just didn't seem to fit anymore. But, you know, this whole thing wasn't just about what was happening on the court. Not by a long shot. Like with almost everything in pro sports, you gotta follow the money. The financial side of this deal is, you could argue, just as important as anything happening between the lines. Okay, so here's the absolute key to understanding this move. The Hawks weren't just trading the Trae Young of today. They were really trading the idea of the massive contract he was about to demand tomorrow. Everybody around the league knew Atlanta was not thrilled about paying that price. And that basically put the Hawks between a rock and a hard place when it came to negotiations. And to really get what they were aiming for, you've got to understand this one key term, the expiring contract. All it means is a player is in the very last year of their deal. Getting one was a top priority for the Hawks. Why? Because at the end of the season, that player's huge salary just vanishes from your payroll. That opens up what we call cap space. Think of it like this. It's a big pile of cash that's suddenly freed up, money you can now spend on new players in the offseason. So this really lays out the whole problem for them. They didn't want to pay the gigantic extension. At the same time, very few teams could even afford to take on Young's current salary. This trade, it was their escape hatch. By bringing in that expiring deal, they found a way out. It clears the books and gives them that priceless flexibility to rebuild. All right, so we've got the why. We know why the Hawks pulled the trigger. But the big question is, did they get enough back for a player of Trae Young's level? Let's take a look at who's coming to Atlanta. First up, you've got CJ McCollum. He's a really skilled veteran guard. He can get his own bucket. He can set up his teammates. Now, he's not going to be your lockdown defender, but he's smart. He knows the schemes. But honestly, look at that last point. That's the real reason he's in this deal. That expiring contract is the key that unlocks Atlanta's entire future. And the other piece is Corey Kispert. He immediately fills a need for the Hawks at forward, but more than that, he's what you'd call an elite shooter, a specialist. Now, he's on a longer contract, and that was probably the price the Hawks had to pay to avoid giving up draft picks. He's basically a plug-and-play guy for the kind of high-volume three-point offense the Hawks want to run. And if you're still wondering why Kispert was so important in this deal, well, This number right here says it all. Shooting 40% from three-point range is exactly the kind of deadly floor spacing Atlanta needs to make their new offense go. He's a hired gun, brought in to do one thing really, really well: knock down shots. So let's put it all together. We've got the on-court fit, the money, the players they got back. What's the final verdict? Did the Atlanta Hawks nail this franchise-altering move? So the final grade for the Hawks on this one comes in at a solid B. Not an A+ for sure, but definitely not a fail either. It feels like a trade that achieved exactly what it set out to do, even if it meant shipping out the best player in the deal. And this final breakdown, this really shows you the thinking behind that B grade. On the one hand, you've got that amazing financial flexibility and players that actually fit your new system. But on the other hand, man, you lost your franchise star. You traded away the best playmaker involved, and you didn't get a single draft pick for your trouble. It was a calculated risk, through and through. And all of that brings us to this one last huge question. It's way too early to say if the Hawks won this trade in the classic sense, but what they definitely won is freedom. The freedom to just start over. The real report card for this deal won't come out for years, and it'll all depend on what they do with that newfound freedom.